to finish the 2024 NFL season, the Carolina Panthers beat division rival Atlanta in the last game, clinching Carolina's second win in their last three games while improving to 5-12 on the year. Granted, 5-12 is awful, especially when it's your, let me check my notes here, seventh straight losing season. But then again, sports are about emotion and illogical faith. And what if former number one draft pick Bryce Young really did find something in the second half of 2024 that will carry over into this season? He accounted for 5 touchdowns in that Atlanta game that you just heard the clip from. What if the Panthers, aided by the softer schedule that comes with a losing season, can surprise some teams and maybe, just maybe, give fans across the Carolinas reason to cheer? Whether such a notion is plausible or ridiculous will start to take shape this weekend when the Panthers start their 31st season against the Jaguars in Jacksonville. Kickoff is at 1 o'clock Sunday. But at Charlotte Talks, we're ready to start the season today, just like the Eagles and the Cowboys, and we've got a team of experts to help us do just that. Nick Carboni is the sports director at WCNC. DaShawn Brown is sports anchor and news reporter at WSOC, and Mike Solarte is sports director at Spectrum News 1. All three of our guests have been on this program before, so welcome back.
Good morning.
Morning, Eric.
So let's be.
I wanted everybody to clear the decks before I said hello.
I like that. He went into overtime. Let's begin with Panthers coach Dave Canales speaking to reporters yesterday about Bryce Young.
The cool part about last year was, there was this cool thing for both of us, really, as his first time coach and play caller, and then for Bryce coming back in and playing the type of ball, and I don't know if he shares this point of view, but I'm just sharing my point of view. I wanted to prove to him that I can put a really good offense together that you'll be excited about, and that you'll be, able to help us grow and evolve over the course of time. And, that's kind of from my standpoint. And then I just look at the way he, approached it, and the way he continues to approach it is to show his teammates first and foremost, and our Panthers fans and all that he's the guy for this team, and so there's just a real cool mutual respect that I think both of us have kind of grown just over the course of time and just working together daily.
It's a quarterback's league. It's a quarterback's world. So Nick, I'm going to start with you. What do you think Bryce Young needs from his teammates and himself to succeed this season?
Well, from himself, I just think he needs to continue to carry the confidence he had at the end of last season. And if you go back to the beginning of last season and getting benched and really just being out of the mix and being talked about nationally and locally, that Carolina was done with him, out on him, and that he would very likely, if he was going to continue his NFL quarterbacking career, it would be somewhere else. I think he's been calloused by that a little bit, not in a way that has made his personality change. He's still kind of this bright, effusive guy, and positive person. But I think that he knows that he's been through it now, and he came out of it on the other side better for it as a player. And I think that the other thing with Bryce Young is this is his third NFL season, but as we all know, it's the first time in his professional football career he has the same head coach, the same play caller, they're the same person, and same offensive system that he did the year before. And I think that carryover and continuity has kind of helped him be comfortable and confident this preseason.
DaShawn, Bryce Young helped the Panthers come from behind against one of the best teams in the league, the Chiefs, in Week 12 last year. He forced overtime, obviously with some help from his teammates, after the Panthers trailed by 11 points with 2 minutes left. CBS Sports illustrated Young's turnaround by pointing out that 7 of Carolina's last 9 games were decided by a touchdown or less, and 4 went to overtime. So going back to Nick's point, it looked to a lot of people like Bryce Young would be practicing his trade somewhere else early last season. How much of a surprise was not only his performance, but that his performance occurred here late last season?
Surprise is an interesting word there. I mean, I think it caught a lot of us off guard given how it happened and the series of events that led up to what we all saw was his natural progression and really him stepping into the role that he was drafted for. But also too, in hearing a lot of what happened in that time that Nick referenced when he was sidelined, the fact that he consistently showed up, the way that he continued to work, even when he was now the guy behind the guy, which we've known just in his history, that's not a place that he had a lot of experience with. He was always the guy. So it was timely when it happened, and also just a great sign for the organization to be able to have their quarterback of the future, or to really feel more confidence that they can now build in that direction. So certainly I think the timing caught me off guard, and perhaps a lot of fans too, given how the season started. But even in hearing how he showed up in those moments when we weren't really sure what his future would be, it really seemed to be the fruit of his work behind the scenes, the success that we saw at the end of last season.
So, Mike, do you think the quarterback question is settled in Carolina for the foreseeable future?
I definitely think it is settled. And, we heard from Canales earlier, you played that clip, but he also told us, he was asked yesterday about Bryce's the way he handled all that he went through last year. And Canales said, look, I was challenging him, but he was challenging me. He showed up every day. He did not, he basically was saying, no, this is my team. And so even though he wasn't the starter, he was still doing all the things to show that he was the starter, even though Andy Dalton was playing ahead of him. So I credit Bryce for much the same way as a lot of people do. The fact that he didn't hang his head, the fact that he didn't sulk, the fact that he didn't step to the sidelines, even though that's where he was going to be on game day while Andy was playing quarterback. He maintained that moxie and that poise and that leadership character quality that he possesses. So yes, to answer your question, I think it is set for the foreseeable future. But again, he has to continue to make those strides. He has to continue to stack and elevate his game. And he did that really well. And the funny thing is, too, guys, is that they went 2-5 in their last 7, and everybody felt good.
Yeah.
Because of the quarterback play. They were in game. They lost to Philadelphia late. They lost to KC late. They lost to Tampa late. But they were in those games, and that alone gave people hope because of the way Bryce was playing. And so if he continues to progress and stay on that track, I think that the quarterback issue is put to bed for a while.
Okay, I think we all know. Go ahead, DaShawn.
I was going to piggyback on what Mike shared. I think even the draft this past season, the first round of the draft, really helps to almost confirm that that's how the front office feels. The fact that their first round pick was another weapon in the arsenal for Bryce, and someone that we're told he stood on the table for. He said it. Teteroy McMillan has said it. So the fact that the front office felt comfortable using that first round pick, given where they're going, to really help support Bryce and to show him publicly, we have your back. I think that says a lot about how they feel about his future in Carolina.
That's the voice of DaShawn Brown. She is with WSOC. Mike Solarte from Spectrum News 1 and Nick Carboni from WCNC are all here. We're talking Panthers with the season opener coming on Sunday. And DaShawn, when you just spoke about the draft, that's a perfect segue into what does Bryce Young have to work with, the supporting cast. How does it compare to last season?
Well, in terms of the running back room, we'll start there. They continue to stress the physicality they expect on this team, that it starts with the run. You have Chuba Hubbard, who had career highs across the board last year. He's returning. They've now supplemented his production with Rico Dowdle, extremely productive in Dallas, now adds competition in the room, but also relief. Trevor Etienne, young talent there, an arsenal of weapons. I mean, the last 2 years, their first round pick has been another wide receiver. Now, youth there, certainly. So this appears to be a season where there's opportunity for both Teteroy McMillan, Xavier Legette to prove that they can be the playmakers that the Panthers are after, but also bringing back, well, I say bringing back, but adding Hunter Renfrow, I think to be determined, but his body of work has shown that he's got the moxie, he's got the experience, he can do it, but certainly just his health and getting back into the rhythm, we'll see how quickly that materializes. And certainly not to understate the O-line coming back. Some fluctuation here in week 1 with an emergency appendectomy to their left tackle and some some little things that have come up, but as a whole, having the continuity there should be huge. So I feel like the support system is there for this group to take another step. But still, they're going to have to show it. I mean, showing that consistently is something that I think we're all curious to see.
A lot in that answer, Mike or Nick. I'm not sure who wants to take this, but let's start with the infamous Bluey transaction of Hunter Renfro's return. Maybe you can explain to the audience what was going on there.
Go ahead, Nick. I'll let you have this one.
Sure. Well, yes, Hunter Renfrow, who is a 29-year-old South Carolina native, was a walk-on at Clemson, won a national championship. Long story short, goes to Las Vegas as a Pro Bowl receiver with the Raiders. Sits out all of last season, and to the NFL world, it's a total mystery. Where did this guy go? Did he just, and his numbers the year before were way down. So did he just kind of figure, okay, I'm done with football. I'm not as good as I was. Well, turns out Hunter Renfrow was suffering from ulcerative colitis, which is a very serious illness. He lost a ton of weight. He could not get healthy for the longest time. And finally, with the help of the medical team, was able to get on the right medication, get on the right diet to come back from that and just operate as a normal day-to-day person. And he was working at his uncle's company down in South Carolina. Then he kind of gets the itch to come back to football. And he basically tells his agent, like, it's got to be Carolina. He's from the area. He's about to have his third kid here. He is a partner in that business in South Carolina. So he comes to the Panthers in the offseason and progressively physically gets better to the point where at the beginning of training camp, he looks like the guy we saw go to the Pro Bowl in Las Vegas. And Dave Canales said as much. But then the Panthers have this influx of young receiving talent. And then Hunter Renfrow injures his hamstring. And in the football, they say your best ability is your availability. He was not available for a lot of that back half of training camp. So the Panthers wound up releasing him, but I think with the knowledge that he did not want to play for another team. And he told us that the other day. It was going to be Carolina or I was going to be out of football. And the Bluey story is that Hunter Renfrow is released Tuesday. Now he's just kind of in his truck in South Carolina pondering what's next. He goes to his uncle's company to pick up a trailer for a new golf cart. And it's work. He calls that work still. And he's in the office picking up the trailer. Was back out to the car where his two young girls are watching Bluey. And he realized that they had kept declining phone calls while they're watching the show. And those phone calls were from Panthers general manager Dan Morgan, because Adam Thielen had been traded the day after Hunter Renfrow was released. So they wanted him back. Then it was a matter of, well, you can go to the practice squad, which is where they kind of stash extra players who could be called up. But for somebody that went to the Pro Bowl and was an established NFL wide receiver, that may not be as enticing. Well, then the day after Thielen was traded, Jalen Coker, who was expected to be his heir apparent, gets injured. So now they really need Hunter Renfrow. And he's really got to answer the phone. And he did, and he's back, and he will start Sunday. It'll be very interesting. People are excited about how he looked at the beginning of camp. But, this was a guy that got cut last week. So we'll see.
So Bluey and other characters, stay with us for more on the Panthers right here on Charlotte Talks on WFAE.
It's just about 9:20. Coming up on tomorrow's Charlotte Talks, fallout continues over a stabbing on the Lynx Blue Line as the mayor calls a special meeting of the MTC. With less than a week until the Charlotte municipal primary election, turnout has been less than stellar. New state testing data is out, and we look at where CMS stands. We'll have those stories and more with our roundtable of reporters tomorrow morning at 9 right here on WFAE.
On last week's Wait, Tom Bodette said he understood why Cracker Barrel gave in and went back to their old logo.
It's one thing like, oh, God, we could get boycotted by, like 35% of the nation. But what they really don't want is National Guard in their gift shop.
And Peter Sagal will join us as we ask musician Renee Rapp what her favorite chain restaurant is. Join us for the news quiz from NPR.
That's Wait, Don't Tell Me coming up Saturday morning at 10 o'clock right here on WFAE. Support comes from WFAE listeners and Charlotte Eye, Ear, Nose, and Throat Associates offering cataract evaluations, same-day ENT appointments, allergy relief, and facial plastic surgery. Details at ceenta.com/appointments. And Johnson & Wales University, committed to accessibility in higher education. The JWU Pledge provides full tuition coverage for qualified students, opening doors to new opportunities. Details at jwu.edu.
Back on Charlotte Talks, I'm Eric Spanberg in for Mike Collins. We're continuing our NFL preview with a panel of experts as the Carolina Panthers get ready for their 31st season. The season opener is Sunday in Jacksonville against the Jaguars. Carolina is on the road again in week 2 at Arizona, and then they will play their home opener on September 21st against Atlanta. Now, Nick, you were taking us through the interesting ride of Hunter Renfrow. I can't even say it. But you mentioned in there Adam Thielen's departure. That is also a big storyline here. So what happened there, and how does that affect the receiving core overall?
Yeah, this was a very surprising development, considering when it happened just a few weeks before the season. In fact, fellow wide receiver Xavier Legette telling us in the locker room yesterday, he was shocked when he found out his fellow wide receiver was traded to Minnesota. Adam Thielen grew up in Minnesota, played high school football, college football, and then professional football in Minnesota for the Vikings for about a decade. Then he comes to Carolina for a few years, and he seemed to love it here, seemed to love the community here, did a lot for the community, did a lot on the field, was the Panthers' most productive receiver the last 2 years, a guy Bryce Young could rely on. So basically what happened is the Vikings had a need at receiver. Adam Thielen and his family and representation see that as a good opportunity for him to go home for what should be the final year of the 35-year-old's NFL career. So they basically asked Dan Morgan, if you can work something out, we'd be interested in going back to Minnesota. So now the general manager, Dan Morgan, has to weigh, I want to do right by a player who has done everything he can for us for 2 years, to my most important job is making sure I take care of the Carolina Panthers first and foremost. So it was, you hear about demands for trades. I think it was short of a demand. It was a request that Dan Morgan did not want to deny, because maybe that could have bred some resentment and led to a, poor dynamic and relationship. And then other players around the league look at that and say, well, you didn't do that for that player, so why would I come there? He got basically the equivalent of a 4th-round pick for Thielen and shipped him back home to Minnesota. And that leaves a very young but talented wide receiver room without that veteran presence. Even Xavier Legette telling us yesterday, Adam kind of told us how to do this. So now, we have to, the pressure's on these guys now. I think the average age of the receivers is like 24. Hunter Renfrow, who we just discussed in the prior segment, is 29 years old. But they drafted these guys for a reason. They would have loved Jalen Coker, of course, not to get injured last week. But it's time for this young receiving core to step up and, fill that production void. And they're fully capable of doing it. They have talented players in the room. And I'll also include second-year tight end JT Sanders in that group too.
One final note on Hunter Renfrow. So he had been signed for $1.3 million. When he came back after the iPad Bluey episode, he has $2 million guaranteed now. So that worked out well for him.
He said today's price is not yesterday's price.
That's right. That's exactly right. DaShawn, you mentioned the offensive line earlier. That was a strong part of this team last season. Pro Football Focus says it will be a strong part of the 2025 Panthers. But they say the biggest weakness will be the defensive line and the linebacking core. Even though Derek Brown is coming back, he missed basically all of last season with a knee injury. So what do we think about the defense and some of those holes and how that unit can improve? They gave up the most yards and points in NFL history last season.
Well, to your point, it was not pretty. Last season was historically one of the worst for this defense, but you look at the moves that the front office made in the offseason, that was really their first point of attack, bringing in key pieces to shore up that defensive line with Turk Wharton, Bobby Brown, of course, the return of Derek Brown, an NFL essentially the year before he was injured, set an NFL record for most tackles by a D lineman. So they've certainly invested there. Again, coming out of the draft, immediately after adding another weapon for the offense, they added 2 pass rushers. Now the development of linebacker Josie Jewell earlier in the or during camp, or perhaps it was a little prior to camp. Let me
Just at the
correct the
start,
timing
yeah.
there. But at the
Yeah.
start of camp,
Yeah.
that was an unexpected development. Josie taking time to really prioritize his health going into the season. So now them having to basically readjust there. Christian Roseboom will step in at middle linebacker. So there are some moving pieces, new pieces. We'll have to see how this chemistry unfolds, but the level of investment is there. They've put their money where their need is. So there is certainly an expectation that they will be markedly better than obviously last season, which should not be hard to do.
Mike, what do you see when you look at the defense of the Carolina Panthers this year?
Honestly, and guys, maybe you agree with me on this or not, but it was talked about a little bit yesterday, but it really is something that I've noticed all through camp is that this group has got an attitude. There's a different, it's corny and cliche to say eye of the tiger, okay? But they're a hungry group of people that want to go out and prove that last year was a one-off, that it was a complete fluke, that they were that bad. And they were, as to DaShawn's point, they were historically bad. Dead last across the league or second to last across the league in many statistical categories. They were either bottom or just above bottom. So it was bad. Now, what caused that? It doesn't help when you lose your standout defensive tackle. It doesn't help when your longtime veteran linebacker gets hurt. It doesn't help when you've got very thin depth in the cornerback in the secondary rather. And the guys that they brought in are guys that have a little bit of snarl to them. The guys that have a little bit of, no, that's not happening to me, this year. DaShawn talked about the guys like Wharton and Brown, and Pat Jones is in place. Roseboom, as DaShawn mentioned, is new to help Trevin Wallace in that group. And I think the linebacker core is probably the thinnest right now. But then again, in the way that they play the 3-4, you've got guys that play defensive end that are listed as linebackers. So and the secondary gets shored up as well with Trayvon Merrick, the guy, the free agent they brought in from Vegas. This is a group that, again, on paper, they look like they're better, but I think it's going to be how Ejiro Evero is able to get the defense playing like it was in his first year as defensive coordinator, as opposed to last year, because last year was not anything that EJ wants to put on paper. The year before, absolutely, because they were top 10 in many categories defensively. They couldn't stop the run last year. That's an issue that should be addressed, should be much better with the additions. And of course, the great equalizer in all of this, though, we can talk about players and schemes and everything else. If guys get hurt, all the plans get changed. So that, I think, is the main focus, is just keeping guys healthy. But if they can stay healthy on that side of the football, they will be better. And if they're just an average defense, just average, 15th, 16th in the league, this team will be in a lot more games than they were a year ago, especially early.
Mike, you mentioned Ejiro Evero, the defensive coordinator. This is a quite unusual situation in that I know he's highly regarded, but typically when a defense has the kind of year that the Panthers had last year, the defensive coordinator is sent packing, and this certainly is not an organization known for its patience. So what about him made him valuable enough that they didn't send him to the curb?
Well, I don't want to try to crawl around Dan Morgan's mind in this regard, but I do think that EJ is very highly regarded. He's a very good coach. He's a very good coordinator. And I think, just my opinion, I got nothing to back this up, but to me, it's one of those things that they looked at what the personnel was last year and basically said, we've got a really great chef and he has no ingredients or not enough ingredients. And so they went and stocked the pantry for him. And now we see if EJ can, work his magic. And again, guys have to be healthy, but I think they were a little thin on defense to begin with. And then the injuries just stacked up and compounded. And it was just, okay, let's see if Eric Spanberg's available to play corner this week. So,
God
you know,
help them.
yeah, well, they didn't ask me. They asked you. You got better foot speed. So, you know, it's one of the, like I say, it's one of those things. I think they look at EJ and say, you know, he's not the problem, because when he's got players and he's got guys that are healthy, they will buy into his system. They lost so much leadership last year, just losing Derek Brown after week 1. I mean, the amazing thing was that he said he felt he got hurt like in the third quarter and still finished the game, and then came off. It's like, oh, my knee doesn't feel so good. So, I mean, you lose a guy that plays like that, and basically playing on one leg for, you know, almost a full quarter, you're losing a lot. And so, to me, I think that's is the feeling. Again, my opinion is that's the feeling that the Panthers have about Avero, that they didn't have enough to work with in terms of you know, defensive depth, and they went out and got him some. So now we'll see how he makes it all work.
That's the voice of Mike Solarte. He is with Spectrum News 1. DaShawn Brown from WSOC is with us, and also Nick Carboni from WCNC. We are talking all things Carolina Panthers with the season opener coming up on Sunday. I mentioned a couple minutes ago the season opener followed by another road game at Arizona, then the home opener on the 21st against Atlanta. I'd like to hear from each of you what strikes you about this schedule from a fan interest standpoint, but also from a team performance standpoint. And DaShawn, I'm going to start with you.
Well, I think I'll start with one of the most glaring developments when the schedule was released was there is a Monday night game, a primetime game for the Panthers. So, excuse me, that's a marked improvement from last year where really it was indicative of the expectations for this team. No primetime opportunities. They do have that this season. And there are several stretches where they really have an opportunity, or at least one core stretch that I noticed going late into the fall, where they've got Green Bay on the road. They're inviting Buffalo to Bank of America Stadium to back-to-back division games. They will have moments where they can really show what they are becoming, how much they're able to build off of that momentum from last season. Certainly the division is still up for grabs. They're going to end with Tampa Bay basically sandwiched at the end of the season. So they do have their opportunity to really show that the investment is paying off, that they're headed in the right direction. And I believe that their schedule is a reflection of that.
Is there a particular game you're most looking forward to?
The next one. I will
The next
give you
one.
the player's
That's
answer.
Oh, Coach DaShawn is here.
That's
Coach
a good
Brown.
answer. It's a process, Nick. It's a process.
It is what
One
it
game
is.
at a time.
Who wants to take it next? Schedule both from a fan standpoint and from a team standpoint.
I'll go. I think from a team standpoint, listen, you can't circle any of these games and say they're easy wins for the Carolina Panthers. They're just not that team yet. They won 5 games last year. They won 2 games the year before. They are still building this. But, you know, obviously quick for any listeners out here who don't know, and Eric, you mentioned it off the top, the worse you are one season in the NFL, the easier your schedule is the next season. It's part of how they try to keep parity in the league and allow teams room to grow and get on an upwards trajectory. So I look at these first 4 games and say, absolutely, the Panthers could win any of these 4 games at Jacksonville, at Arizona, home against Atlanta, and then at New England. New England had a worse record than Carolina last year. They have a new coach. Carolina finished last season by beating Atlanta on the road. They beat Arizona at home and traditionally have had success against the Cardinals, another team that's still trying to perpetually almost seems like figure things out. And this week at Jacksonville, the Jaguars are favored, but they have a new coach. They have new personnel, coordinators, system. Their quarterback, Trevor Lawrence, has kind of been through the ringer in his own career and has been very up and down. So I think it's a game that Carolina could go down and win if they play good football. But, you know, I think the true test comes in October, not just in the teams they play. And here's where I bring it to a fan perspective. Dallas is here in October. How many Cowboys fans are at Bank of America Stadium as opposed to Panthers fans? And then Buffalo is here. How many Bills fans are in the bank as opposed to Panthers fans? That may be the true litmus test of how this season has gone through a month and a half, because we've seen those other fans flood Bank of America Stadium year after year and turn it into their home stadium. Well, now we'll see if Carolina is good enough to kind of turn that tide and get their culture back in the building. And I think Mike made the point, yeah, they were 2-5 towards the back end of last season, but it felt like something was happening. Even their guard, Robert Hunt, told us that in the preseason. Like, and I can't quote Robert Hunt on here. He's not safe for public radio, but he basically said we hadn't really done anything and people loved us. So if you can have a successful start to the season, that building in October will kind of be that'll be the telltale sign.
Mike, what stands out for you with this schedule?
Well, let me just start by saying, Eric, you thrust a dagger into my soul at the start of this by saying that they're entering the 31st season, which made me realize I've covered every single season of this team's existence, and it's 31 years, starting when I worked in Raleigh. So, yes, take thy beak from out my heart. When you look at this, and let me go back to Nick's point about the fans in the stadium. That's been a recurring thing for 31 years, no matter how good the team is. But in 2015, it was certainly less pronounced. It was always going to be, in 2015, you were a Panther fan, you weren't getting a ticket if you were a visiting fan. And also to Nick's point, hide your folding tables in late October when Buffalo comes to town. All I'm going to say there. But I think overall, the division is there for the taking. This is, I mean, when you look at from the outside perspective, you look at the NFC South, and the NFC South champion this year across the league, I think, is likely going to be, in my favorite saying, the valedictorian of summer school. Okay? It's not a great division. You got so many question marks. Tampa's the favorite because they've done it, but Tampa was taken to the brink by this team last year when they were figuring things out. And they were trying to win the division and trying to push themselves to the playoffs. And I'm not saying anything about their personnel or their coaching or anything like that. It's just, they're just not an elite football team across the NFL. Tampa Bay, I'm talking about. So New Orleans has a new quarterback. Atlanta's got a new quarterback or a young quarterback with a dangerous running back in Bijan Robinson. But nobody stands out. There's no one team that says, "No, this is our house," So I think in that regard, Panther fans should have plenty of optimism and plenty of hope that there's a chance that this team can, 9 wins might be enough to win the NFC South. Now, can Carolina get there? That's what we have to wait and see. But the division is there for the taking. There's not one particular game that stands out to me to really get back to your question. It's just a matter of how this team performs. And I think the first 2 weeks on the road when they're away and what the Panther fans see on TV, if they see them win and they see them play well and win, then you start to maybe get those 2015 vibes back inside the bank when they come home to play Atlanta. And the Atlanta game is also another fan measuring stick as to how many Falcons fans, because that's not a long trip for them to drive up 4 hours and try to infiltrate the stadium. So I think the first 2 weeks really will be kind of a telltale to see how things will go in the 704.
We're coming right back on Charlotte Talks.
It's just about 9:40. You're listening to Charlotte Talks on WFAE. Coming up in 20 minutes, President Trump campaigned on a promise to crack down on immigration. Now his administration is employing new tactics to reach those goals, like detaining people at their immigration hearings. Next time on 1A, what you need to know about these tactics and who they target. That's in 20 minutes on WFAE.
Do you love a great story? Are you looking for a bit of a respite from the daily news? Are you ready to embark on an extraordinary journey through captivating tales and immersive narratives? Did you know WFAE offers a 24-hour-a-day stream of the best stories and podcasts handpicked from independent creators? It's called Public Radio Remix, and it features a lot of great content that's not heard anywhere else. Find PRX Remix at WFAE.org on our mobile app, or if you have an HD radio, find it on WFAE HD3.
Hi, I'm Nina Totenberg. Are you someone who talks about how great public radio is, but you're still not a donor? Rather than wait for the next pledge drive, you can support the programs you love by donating that unwanted vehicle. It could be worth hundreds of dollars to this station, and you could get a tax deduction. Or you could just give us hundreds of dollars directly. We'd like that a lot. And thank you.
Donate your car today at WFAE.org/cars.
Back on Charlotte Talks, I'm Eric Spanberg in for Mike Collins. Pro football is back starting tonight with the Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles taking on the Dallas Cowboys. The Carolina Panthers kick off their 31st season. Sorry, Mike, had to do it. On Sunday in Jacksonville at 1 o'clock on Fox. And we are talking all things Panthers with a trio of experts, DaShawn Brown from WSOC, Nick Carboni from WCNC, and Mike Solarte of Spectrum News 1. Mike, you and Nick were both talking a little bit about the fan atmosphere at Bank of America Stadium. So that makes this a perfect time to explore the psyche of Panther fans coming into this season. I'm curious what the three of you sense and what you hear, because football fans tend to be pretty vocal and get in touch with the media, or at least let them know how they feel. So what is the sentiment among Panther fans?
Well, I say tread lightly with the Panther fans out there. But I don't, and maybe DaShawn and Nick will agree on this. I think that there is optimism, but it's guarded because there's been so many years, like you say, 7 straight years now that they've missed the playoffs, and they want Bryce to be the guy, but do they have enough weapons around him? Can the defense be better? Well, they made strides last year, so we're hoping that they can the pieces added can turn things around. Like I say, I think that they are optimistic, but it's a guarded optimism. And if they fall flat in the first couple of weeks, they'll be like, well, same old Panthers, here we go. And in the off season, though, I mean, this summer, there was a run on hopium. There's a lot of hopium in the 704, man. There's a lot of hopium. It's the drug of choice for Panther fans. And so now we'll see if that hope turns into something tangible, something real. And I'm always a positive guy. I always look for the best stories, the stories that are fun and happy. And it's been 7 years of really rolling up my sleeves and doing a lot of digging to try to find the positives for this team. So maybe this is the year. But again, the optimism is guarded, I think, from the Panther fan base.
DaShawn, how do we keep them away from the haterade?
Just trying to get Mike to trademark this Hopium t-shirt. I feel like this is a thing. Hold on to that. That is Mike Solarte. I do agree with what Mike just shared in that there is a very cautious optimism, at least from what I've sensed so far among the fan base, and understandably so. I mean, that is based on their experience with this team over the last 7 years. And I'm thinking back to even a conversation in the locker room with J.C. Horn earlier this week, where he mentioned even in that 7-year stretch, I mean, there was a point where they went 3-0 and the season still went awry. So there's certainly a sense of this team has to prove it consistently. They've had little spurts here and there to give fans a reason to get back on board. And there's always been something. And I mean, certainly with the injury situation over the last few years, not everything has been within our control, or I guess the team's control, but really for fans to see a body of work that says, okay, now it's safe to breathe, to hold on to the hopium, that it's not so much of a high, but that's truly where we are. I think really, if only you could see Solarte at this point. Time will tell. I really do think this is one of those moments where they're going to have to show it consistently for fans to truly be on board. But I do believe the hope is there.
And Nick, to DaShawn's point, 36-80 is your one-loss mark since 2018 when David Tepper became the owner. So how do Panther fans keep their heads up going into this season? Sounds like they're at least a little bit optimistic.
What's that internet meme? I'm just ready to be hurt again. I think that's how Panthers fans feel heading into this season. If you made a chart of, quarterback talent and fan hope, like those lines would run together in an upwards trajectory. And I think the way Bryce Young finished last season gave a lot of fans the belief that this team could be better and that he could be their franchise quarterback. Although I think the team, when it comes to handing him that kind of title and contract, is in wait and see mode. But the organization for the last couple of years has done things, quote unquote, the right way from a football sense. They are building the offensive and defensive lines and then going out from there. They are surrounding their quarterback with players that suit him. And they have a coach that has a real plan offensively, and he tailors it to that quarterback. So what I'm trying to say is, while you can't guarantee success or more success this season than last, the team is doing things that, should be a predictor of future success. They're the way that they have operated the last few years of those 7 or 8 years under this ownership has been more geared towards what usually works in the NFL.
I think that's nicely put. As I mentioned several times, Jacksonville is the site of the opener. We all remember, I think, pretty vividly what happened the last time the Panthers went to Jacksonville. That was on New Year's Eve 2023, I believe. And not only did they lose, but David Tepper threw a drink at a fan and was subsequently fined. And it was one of the lower points of the franchise. So coming into this game, I think we can hopefully safely say it will go at least a little bit better than that last time. But what are some of the things to look at? Nick, you mentioned earlier Trevor Lawrence is the Jaguars quarterback. He's had kind of a up and down career. They have the Heisman Trophy winner, Travis Hunter, but they're coming off a tough season. So what are a few of the things you're going to be looking for in this matchup this week?
Yeah, perhaps a sippy cup in the owner's box would suffice. So Jacksonville's very interesting. They have the new head coach, and that new head coach is Liam Cohen, who was the offensive coordinator at Tampa Bay last year. He followed the same track as the Panthers coach, Dave Canales. So there's familiarity from the Panthers' defensive perspective, because he's an offensive coach, of what he may try to do with these players. I think the most interesting thing to all of us and nationally is what the Jaguars plan to do with that Heisman Trophy winner, Travis Hunter. For those who don't know, Travis Hunter is coming into the NFL trying to be one of the only players in league history and modern league history to play offense and defense. It's an extremely thing to do physically and mentally. And the Panthers get the first crack at seeing what that looks like from Jacksonville. From what we can tell in Jacksonville's practice, their depth chart is that Travis Hunter will be used more on offense as a wide receiver, but also in some scenarios as a defensive back as well. So while we all love to talk about that and what are the Jaguars going to do and focus on that, anytime DaShawn, Mike, and I have asked a player in the locker room this week, it's about a 4-second answer. We're just going to prepare like for every other player, is basically the paraphrasing. So I think there's 2 layers to that. One, these guys know how hard it's going to be to try to do what Travis Hunter is going to try to do in the NFL. And 2, he may not be enough of a focus on either side of the ball to dedicate an entire week of game planning for. So that's what is most interesting to, I think, most fans, is what they do with Travis Hunter and what that looks like. But, for me, I think it comes down to one thing for Carolina: run the football. We talked about their new running backs. They've really got to pound the football and stay ahead of the chains, and that'll help Bryce Young.
DaShawn, Mike, what are you looking for this Sunday? What do you keep an eye on?
I guess I'll hop in there. Gosh, Nick hit so many of the points. Obviously, Travis Hunter is one of the national storylines, but I mean, this is their first look. Will be all of our first look at all that the Panthers have done in the offseason through camp. I mean, this is their first opportunity to show who they are. So the focus really has to be internal from my perspective. Them really sort of setting the course for the season, or at least, they like to say one game at a time, but it does matter how you start. There's so much that can do to really propel this organization forward going into the next few weeks. So their focus is really it has to be on putting on a show, really running the ball as they said that they would do, stopping the run. And there is the element to Jacksonville, just looking at the fact that they are in a point of transition with a new head coach, new coordinators, that unknown element of week 1. There's so much opportunity there for this team. It would feel like a miss to not capitalize It is the NFL, so anything could happen, but the opportunity is there for them to really make a strong statement going into the season.
Our summer school valedictorian, what do you have to say?
Wow, you did get my transcripts. Um, the the Travis Hunter thing is certainly intriguing, and I asked a couple of guys in the room yesterday, when you have a player that knows the wide receiver position and knows how to play cornerback, does that make him a more dangerous wide receiver? And jury was split on that. Some say, well, it doesn't make much of a difference because when you're playing offense, you're more focused on running your route than you are thinking about what the DB is going to do. And then another one would say, well, you can't beat timing, and the offenses depend so much on timing, and you've got to be able to, maintain that. So maybe it is. No one really, and they knew what I was talking about, Travis Hunter. It was kind of the basis of the question. We're talking so much though about a rookie that is learning everything there is to learn about just playing one position, let alone two. And yes, he's got some defensive packages they'll put him in on, but I think making the focus on trying to stop Travis Hunter is really something that you do at your own peril, because you forget that they've got running backs and there are other wide receivers and a quarterback. And then, when they don't have the ball, you got to contend with their defense. So, and to DaShawn's point, week one is the greatest of the unknowns in any week, because of the fact that you have not seen everything that this team your opponent's going to do. Flip side, they haven't seen everything you're going to do either. So, yeah, I just look at the week one matchup with Jacksonville as best on best. Line up and run your stuff, and I think Nick though really hit the nail on the head. You run the football, you keep the football out of Jacksonville's hands. Don't turn it over. Eat up the clock. If you win a rock fight 10-3, 7-6, whatever the case may be, there are no pictures in the standings. You win a game however you need to win a game, and you move on from that, and you go on to week two in Arizona. But I think the key for Carolina this week: hold the football, run the football, and if they dominate time of possession, that means you've got the thing, but longer than they do, and you just move on, and then you figure out what you're going to do next week when you can look at what Arizona did, and you can kind of game plan a little bit better that way. But the first week is always, to me, the toughest.
That's the voice of Mike Solarte. He's with Spectrum News 1. DaShawn Brown from WSOC and Nick Carboni of WCNC are also with us. We're talking about the Carolina Panthers and the start of football season. And Mike, you mentioned moving on. That makes me think of on to Cincinnati, which makes me think of on to Charlotte. And I know you're going to be at Jerry Richardson Stadium this weekend. So we're going to take a little diversion from the NFL to college football. The man who's won the most Super Bowls in NFL history will be on the sidelines at Jerry Richardson Stadium on Saturday, Bill Belichick and the UNC Tar Heels. Just give me your perspective on what is such an odd, surreal circumstance that is coming at us very quickly.
Well, when the Tar Heels hired Bill Belichick, I said that this is going to go one of two ways. Either it's going to be the blueprint for how college football programs operate in the future with NIL and transfer portal and all these things. You go get an NFL coach with an NFL GM and you run it like an NFL program. That could be the gold standard. Or it could be a 5-alarm fire. Okay? And because of that, I still maintain that there is no middle. Those are your two extremes. And everybody just piling on Carolina for the way that they got housed by TCU in the first game. They're all leaning they're all leaning over here. They're all leaning 5-alarm fire. It's one game. Okay. It is one game. It did not look good. I'm not here to say it looked great for 4 minutes and 5 seconds. I mean, that opening drive was the stuff of legend, but there was a whole 3 quarters plus to play. And, so how Belichick and his staff get this thing going forward now, because you got kicked in the teeth. So you know what that feels like. So now you got to figure out, how do we not get kicked in? How do we start kicking some teeth? And that's the thing that this team has to. They got a lot of things working against them, but you know what? It's football. No one's coming to save you. You got a schedule to play, and you got to go play it. So this is going to be worth watching to see what they do from here.
Mike's had a good day. He's at Hopium, start kicking some teeth.
It's football season.
2-minute warning if we can keep the football theme. So let's get into predictions, opening week, and also season records. So remember that we will save this. We'll post it every day as the season goes on. So that shouldn't alarm you. DaShawn, I'm going to pick on you and let you start first. What do you see?
I think you saw my face when you asked for open. I'm going to go Carolina on opening week. Why not? They have made the investment. This is theirs for the taking. So I am going to have a shot of hopium this morning, and I am going Carolina for Sunday for sure against Jacksonville. And into the season, man, this is putting me on the spot a little bit, but I'm going to have to own it. I will go 8 wins.
8 wins. Okay. 8 and 9. NFL teams play 17 regular season games. I know y'all know that, but some maybe casual fans. Nick Carboni, you are on the clock.
All right. Along with my 2 espressos this morning, Mike Solarte did give me some hopium yesterday in the Panthers locker room. I think with the continuity, the confidence built from last year, the Panthers are better set up to win this game than Jacksonville in week 1, and all that they're trying to figure out for the first time and trying to figure out how are we going to use this new piece when the focus really should be on making sure Trevor Lawrence takes the next step in his career. I think the Panthers are just better set up to win this game. I'll say Carolina 23, Jacksonville 20. I'm also going 8 wins. I think Carolina will start well and finish well this year.
8 and 9. Mike Solarte, the valedictorian of summer school, will close us out.
Again, keep your eyes off my transcripts.
You've got 15 seconds.
I like Carolina this week. I'm going to push the envelope to 9 wins for 2025.
Wow, that was quick. Now I've got to fill some time. I got to thank you.
You said I got 15 seconds.
Yeah.
Man.
No, you're a pro's pro. Mike Solarte, DaShawn Brown, Nick Carboni, thank you for a very fun hour. Let's hope it's a fun football season starting Sunday in Jacksonville. For Mike Collins, I'm Eric Spanberg. Thanks for listening to Charlotte Talks on WFAE.
Charlotte Talks is a production of 90.7 WFAE. Support for Charlotte Talks comes from Mazda of South Charlotte. Our executive producer is Gabe Altieri. The senior producer is Sarah D'Elia. Our producer is Chris